Hello there, welcome back to another Cloud with Chris weekly vlog. You're with me, Chris Reddington, and here we talk about all things cloud. Now, thank you for joining here in weekly vlog number 22. So that's 22 of these weekly vlogs that we've been doing. So by my count, that's what, 5.5 months? Absolutely flying by during these, so it's great to see just the rhythm of these keep going. I appreciate this one is a little bit later this week, but that's not a huge problem. Yesterday and over the weekend, it's a public holiday here in the UK, so I have been doing a little bit of relaxing, though not that much, to be honest. I on Saturday have started a 5-part blog post series, which I'm hoping to get out this week. And then yesterday was actually writing up a blog post, which went out this morning, which we'll take a look at in a moment here as well. So it has been busy. I'm going to be taking a bit of time today to see friends and go ahead and just do some fun things. But then the work will continue on that 5-part blog post series. Maybe I will reveal a bit more about that later. Let's see. So you know the deal. If you like the content, go ahead, hit the like button, hit subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you know as soon as there is brand new content. And thank you all for your support. We are now on 536 subscribers, and I've of course continued posting my content on LinkedIn, on Twitter, on Facebook, on Reddit, and I've recently kind of activated some easy links for people to go and use, which also helps me out understanding where people are actually coming from as well. So I'm starting to get a bit of insight around the marketing channels that actually work for me. So going to be really focusing on that over the coming months to try and grow the channel here, because I'm hoping you all enjoy the content as much as I enjoy creating it. So I want to make sure it goes out to a wider pool of folks. So with that, we're going today to be talking about Microsoft Build. So you've probably seen all over the place Microsoft Build announcements and summaries and vlogs and whatnot. Rather than going through all of the different videos, different announcements, all of those things, I'm going to do more of a recap of my summary of Microsoft Build, what I particularly enjoyed. And then I'm going to talk a bit more about some of the key announcements that I think were worthwhile and where personally I'm going to be investing some of my time to make sure I'm up to speed as well. So with that, we'll go ahead. We will jump over to the screen share here. So let's go ahead and do that. And here we go. So you can see on screen here, we have the Microsoft Build 2021 highlights summary. I posted that one on Friday evening, Friday afternoon. And that really just brings together a number of different pieces. It brings together the themes, the pillars, for example, that Build was really focusing on. And those pillars were increasing developer velocity with Microsoft's end-to-end developer platform, deliver new intelligent cloud-native apps by harnessing the power of data and AI, build cloud-native apps your way and run them anywhere, build the next generation of collaborative apps for hybrid work, build differentiated SaaS apps with the Microsoft Cloud, and building digital twins, mixed reality, and metaverse apps. So there was an absolute ton of information, as usual, launched at Build this year. Lots of updates, lots of brilliant talks, and lots to get stuck into. So that's what we're going to be diving into here, just breaking down some of those key pieces. Now, one of the reasons Build was so important to me this year is I was actually a presenter at Build. So if you're interested, I have linked to it in the blog post here as well. I was joined by Dean Bryan and Carol Logan. And what we did was we talked through an end-to-end scenario, really, of deploying static web apps using Blazor, using GitHub Actions, GitHub Code Spaces, Azure Static Web Apps to go and quickly and easily have frictionless free code development. Because if you remember, developer velocity was one of those key pillars, and that's really where we were slotting in there. And had a lot of fun, and as can happen, right, we had some demo challenges along the way, but recovered those live, which is always fun. So it was an absolute pleasure to work with both Dean and with both Carol as well. So hopefully get another chance to do that in the future. But that was a 30-minute talk, and really the focus around it as well was UK communities. The three of us are all meetup organisers, so Carol does a a ton of different meetup groups over in Glasgow and up in Scotland there. I myself, Azure Thames Valley, and then Dean, I believe, was Cloud Security London, if I remember rightly. So that was something we just wanted to shine a bit of a light on and make sure that folks who maybe aren't as engaged with the communities are aware that they actually exist, that they are looking for support, that they are looking for people to join their communities and keep on growing their groups there. So again, if you're interested in finding more about those UK communities, take a look. Or even if you're interested in Blazor and Azure Static Web Apps, take a look, because there'll certainly be something in there for you as well. Good, so let's jump back then and focus on my perspectives of build and focus on really the write-up here that I put together. So first off, this is a long blog post full of many, many links to Azure updates, to blogs, to various sessions from Microsoft Build. I'm not expecting anyone to go ahead and click through every single link in that post, to go ahead and review every single update, every single blog post, every single session. I've done that. I've collated them all in one place, for me, to be able to go and reference back and just scan and figure out what's of interest. And I've got a single point to go and run into there. But also then for anyone else, because if you go ahead and want to look at, developer velocity and what the key updates were, what sessions may be good to go and come together, this is like a one-stop shop for that. And there are some great articles and updates out there, like the Book of News, for example. There's the Azure Docs, which have brought all of the videos together as well, but they don't bring the blogs, the updates, the sessions all together in one. So that's why I've gone ahead and done that here. So from my perspective, what were the key focus areas for me? What were the key things that I was interested in? It's interesting actually that I've ordered the bullet points in one particular order, but then the sections beneath that, I would probably say are in order of where I was particularly interested in things. Now, it's not to say, for example, that, mixed reality, digital twins, metaverse apps aren't interesting to me at all. They 100% are. I'm really fascinated about that space. It's just, there's so much content there. I have to try and prioritize some things and comparing it to the day-to-day of what I work with. And that's probably some of the areas I work the least with, I would say. So the biggest area for me was about cloud native apps and being able to run them anywhere. So you've probably heard about Azure Arc in the past, the fact that you have Azure Arc for Kubernetes, the fact that you have Azure Arc for servers. You can go and use the Azure management plane, so using things like Azure Policy, for example, or if you're using Azure Arc for Kubernetes, being able to use things like GitOps, and being able to go and manage that all from a central place. So getting that cloud investment, but having it somewhere that is not Azure. Could be on another cloud, could be AWS or GCP. It could be on premises, for example. It could be on my local machine that I'm streaming from right now. And that's really the promise of Azure Arc. And the brilliant thing that was announced here is Azure Arc so far was very data focused or infrastructure focused at the moment. And even Kubernetes, right, is still really an infrastructure play. I'm very firm in when I'm talking to customers or to meetup groups or whoever that Kubernetes is all about a platform for building platforms. It is not an application development platform. It's so much more than that. So, if you have the needs to deploy a single web app, Kubernetes might be a bit overkill there. And that's what's particularly interesting about these updates that came out from Build last week, because there is this blog post, and then, of course, announcements, Azure updates, and series of videos as well, that basically talk about the fact that Microsoft have announced Azure Arc for application services. So Azure App Service, Azure Functions, Azure Logic Apps, Event Grid, and API Management are now all capable of running in either a cloud-native conformant Kubernetes cluster or an Azure Arc deployment. So that could include, for example, other clouds, AWS, GCP. That could include on-premises, for example. And think about the power of that for a minute. I now have the power to go and run app services or Azure Functions, or Logic Apps. Now, Azure Functions and Logic Apps, sure, they were kind of there already because you could containerize your Azure Functions, you could deploy them with Cada. Same with Logic Apps with the new standard version that has gone out of Logic Apps rather than the multi-tenant version or the consumption tier. You can now go ahead and run all of those across Azure Arc enabled clusters, GCP, AWS, on-premises. So you can have that one consistent application deployment environment across Azure, across Google, across Amazon, across on-premises. Now, not every single feature is supported at the moment in terms of those different services. So for example, in app services, there are certain things I think application insights may not be there, for example, at the moment. I can't remember off the top of my head. And you could probably see where this is going, right? This is actually the 5-part blog post series, and it might become a 6-blog post series because I've realized I haven't got anything on API management yet. But that is going to be what I'm focusing on later in this week. Not just the whole, hey, here's how you go and deploy Azure Arc onto Kubernetes, but also comparing from my experience what that experience looks like in terms of running those Azure services on a Kubernetes cluster. How does that relate if, for example, you are a Kubernetes operations person, you understand Kubernetes, you of course don't understand how the Azure services work in the back end because no one's had to do that. They're all PaaS multi-tenanted services. And likewise, if you use the Azure PaaS services, how does that experience differ in that Kubernetes environment? So that's really what I'm going to be focusing on in those 5 or 6 series of blog posts. You might have caught a glimpse of that on Twitter by some of the tweets I've been sending out to folks. There are little things I'm just running into where I'm pushing the boundaries a bit here, but wait and see for that one. I'm hoping I'm going to release all 5 at once, but time may not allow that, so I might have to phase the releases of those over the coming weeks, but that is the intent, so let's see what happens there. So for me, that was the absolute biggest and hugest of announcements at Microsoft Build. I think that is such a huge shift. And I don't think it's really like it's a surprise when you think about Azure Arc and the investments that have been made for policy and management of virtual machines at scale, then Kubernetes clusters at scale. The next logical progression, of course, they did databases as well and running those instances on a Kubernetes cluster. The next logical transition there is your applications. So lots of great updates. We've talked about those. There's also updates relating to event hubs. There's now a premium SKU of that. So dedicated instances there. Very fascinating. That's again something I want to get my hands onto there. PowerShell support for durable functions is now GA. There's actually new storage options for durable functions as well. Now, I think for a while it was quite common knowledge that SQL was going to be one of the backends for the durable functions, which is now in preview. But there was another one there as well, which has absolutely escaped me as I do this here. It was Netherite, which is a storage provider which has been built in collaboration with Microsoft Research. And again, really fascinating because they're using a combination of services under the covers to go and make that one work, like Azure Event Hubs, for example, and page blobs. Really interesting that they're starting to have this pluggable architecture for durable functions. Really intrigued to see where that goes because I think that's going to open up a world of possibilities. Then several AKS announcements. So Azure RBAC for Kubernetes authorization in AKS is now GA. So for the folks that were in the containers open hack a couple of weeks ago, and we were obviously going ahead and implementing that in our cluster, the documentation had updated a little bit before the features had updated, and we were kind of in this state where the docs didn't quite match up to what we were doing. That is now generally available. So, that is definitely something worthwhile taking a look at. And actually on those docs, there's something in there which is about removing local administrators as well. So if you think about or local credentials, I should say, if you think about the --admin flag that you sometimes use when logging into a Kubernetes cluster, there's now an ability to remove that so you can enhance that security. And combining that with Azure RBAC for Kubernetes authorization, I think that's a killer combination. So worth checking out. Encryption at host support is now in AKS, AKS support for FIPS compliance nodes, and then a series of updates for AKS with regulated industries and baselines of what based upon people's experiences, the product group's knowledge, and various other folks, what good looks like, or what a baseline looks like, I should say, for specific industries. I think if you are in one of those regulated industries, you definitely want to check that one out. Public preview of Kubernetes 1.21 is now in preview support for AKS. Containerd is now in preview support for Windows Server containers. Cluster Auto Upgrade now supports and respects planned maintenance windows, which again, great update for you operational folks out there. And then AKS on Azure Stack HCI is now GA. Then there were some other pieces in there about WebSocket support for API management is in preview. GA support of IBM WebSphere applications server on Azure VMs, and running Java, Red Hat JBoss EAP on Azure VMs as well. So lots and lots of updates. Series of blog posts around open source applications on Azure and flexibility with those, and running Java applications, because again, lots of great updates are on the Java side of things, and Microsoft GAing their Open JDK, for example. So what I've got is a series of build sessions then alongside that. So things like asking the experts about modernizing applications with containers, microservices made easy with Dapper, lots of Ask the Experts sessions, .NET 6 deep dive, Logic Apps powering the future of integration, building your first web app with Blazor and WebAssembly, cloud native applications that run anywhere. So all of that is self-contained in that section for you. Then we've got another section here on the developer velocity piece. So talking through all the tools that you have with Visual Studio, GitHub, Power Apps, and Azure. There was a great session by Amanda Silver, Donovan Brown, and Julie Strauss talking about all of those different components and services and platforms, I guess you could call them platforms, coming together with those tools. So lots of Azure updates there. The Open JDK we've mentioned, the Developer Velocity Lab from GitHub there, being able to easily onboard insights for Java apps on Azure App Services, Security Center integration with Azure GitHub Actions. I think it was an awesome addition. That is one that I'm really looking forward to trying out. And then many different things to do with Azure Monitor. And then, of course, App Service Managed Certificates are now generally available as well. That is actually something I talk about in the blog post I wrote earlier today, which we'll check out in a bit. And then a number of different sessions. So scaling DevSecOps with GitHub and Azure, supercharging developer velocity, developer experience, Fusion Teams, low-code tools, and more. So bringing that Power App story and Power FX and some of that low-code, no-code investment there. Automated database testing, increase your .NET productivity with Visual Studio, enhance the JavaScript experience with Visual Studio. You've got your Windows on My Linux, Windows subsystem for Linux. There's tons of stuff in there. Go ahead, take a look at that. Another session, differentiated SaaS apps for Microsoft Cloud. So thinking about things like Power Platform, Dynamics 365, Azure and Teams, how you can bring all those together to build awesome applications. So lots of build sessions on, for example, B2C applications and Azure AD external identities, Cosmos DB, for example, securely managing cloud applications, and building zero trust applications using Microsoft Identity Platform. Collaborative applications, so thinking about things like Microsoft Teams, Microsoft Graph, and Windows, how you can go ahead and build applications using those services. So several folks came together in a keynote to talk about that. Some great updates there around traversal using relays around NAT for Azure Communication Services, the Azure Communication Services UI library, which I believe is the first Azure UI library to be released as well there. And then Azure Communication Services calling SDK for Windows apps in public preview. Lots of great build sessions there around Microsoft Graph, how you can bring the Microsoft Graph toolkit into your applications, being able to use Azure Communication Services with Microsoft Teams to build that collaborative experience, whether it's yourselves using Teams in your internal systems to call clients through the website, for example, through Azure Communication Services, and that interoperability. Some really fascinating sessions there. So again, that might be of interest for some of you folks there. Then also we've got harnessing the power of data and AI in your applications with Azure. Now, to be honest, again, it was so difficult to write this blog post in a certain order because there are so many areas which I'm really passionate about and interested in. And there was a ton of information in this particular session. there were announcements all around Azure Cosmos DB, for example, the role-based access control functionality to access the data plane is now generally available. The Azure Cosmos DB serverless tier is now generally available. Preview announcements of Cosmos DB integrated cache, so you can optimize for your reads, for example, and bring down the request units required for your reads to your Cosmos DB is now in preview. Always encrypted for Azure Cosmos DB, a significant announcement there. A significant announcement again, preview of Azure SQL Database Ledger's capability. Tons and tons, even for some of the projects I work on in my spare time. Azure Cosmos DB free tier is now enhanced, so they've given more request units and more gigabytes of space that you can use in the free tier. So there's plenty of announcements, and that's not even getting onto things like the partial document updates for Azure Cosmos DB, which I've been waiting for such a long time, so I'm really excited to try that one out. Azure Machine Learning updates, tons of those. Azure Applied AI services, being able to go one step beyond cognitive services and their generic nature and having very task-based problems that they're looking to solve with this Azure Applied AI services. And there were some which were GA, generally available at build, and some which went into public preview. Confidential Ledger, for example, which goes alongside the SQL database ledger that we mentioned earlier. There's so many updates in that space. And again, so many sessions at build to go and support that. So harnessing the power of data in your applications with Azure, using, for example, confidential compute across Azure, how to use Azure confidential compute using Intel SGX to protect apps and solutions in the cloud. Signal as a custom story. I find that fascinating. I use Signal quite a lot. And, given the fact they mentioned that, there's obviously components which run on Azure. So really interesting. I haven't had a chance to dive into that yet. But again, so many great sessions at build to go and take a look at there. And then finally, by no means the least loved in this at all, but converging physical and digital with digital twins, mixed reality and metaverse apps. I really want to get involved in this space. Like, I really see a lot of power when we start bringing that digital realm to the physical realm. When you think about Internet of Things, Azure Maps, Synapse Analytics, Power Platform, all these things coming together and being able to build these really collaborative, interactive apps where, like they shown Microsoft Mesh and HoloLens back in Ignite earlier this year, I think there's some really innovative and powerful combinations and possibilities that can be achieved here. And I really want to get stuck into that space. Like most people, it's finding the time to get involved in that. So again, by no means least on my list here, even though it's at the bottom, it's just this is probably the one which I'll get to last, unfortunately. But again, lots of great updates and build sessions there to go and take a look at, including asking the experts about mixed reality tools, mixed reality and metaverse apps, connecting IoT data to HoloLens 2, Azure Digital Twins and Unity, Dataverse for developers, and Azure Maps Creator as well. So lots and lots of great insights. Now, of course, there was one particular highlight for a lot of people, and that was a keynote from Scott Hanselman, so application development with Scott Hanselman and friends. He was joined by several folks, including, for example, Abel Wang, who has been on the show and a good friend, Isaac Levin as well, who has been on the show previously a couple of times, and got to give Isaac a big shout out as well. The URL shorteners that I'm using now with the UTM tracking links built in is actually built upon a project that I think he also forked from someone else he knows. So big shout out for Isaac for mentioning that on the show previously, and just his guidance and support as I got that set up there as well. But going back to the point here, this keynote was incredible. It was just absolutely amazing. It was not necessarily in terms of announcements, but the way it was executed, where we've been in this world of COVID lockdowns, not being able to see each other. It was a breath of fresh air, rather than having that kind of glossy keynote where individuals stand on stage in front of a green screen and have the announcements kind of thing. They had this kind of almost like you were watching a Netflix show kind of vibe to it. So, and what was fascinating about it was Scott actually gave a TikTok trailer teaser weeks before build. And I don't think anyone really thought that actually that was effectively the introduction to the session, because it ends with him opening the doors to what looks like an auditorium. And then on the other side of that, are the people who are in this particular keynote. And the way they execute it is like they're planning the keynote itself, and it's a planning session. Lots of eye rolls, lots of sarcasm, lots of Scott wanting to go ahead and show the cube and use the cube in a demo, which I did very nearly buy, but then I managed to restrain because I've got enough pet projects on the go at the moment. But really fascinating and informative session. So kudos to the whole team, the production team that were involved in there, everyone behind the scenes, because something like that takes a ton of work to execute on. Having been in theatre, doing amateur dramatics, etc., I know how long it takes for things like that to actually execute at a scale and just flawlessness like that did. So kudos to every single one of you, and thank you. That was very entertaining, very informative. So with that is the build updates. We're about 27 minutes here, so we're going to quickly wrap things up by what's coming up this week, what's happened over the last week with Cloud with Chris, and what you've got to look forward to here. So over the last week, on Monday, released a... Sorry, no, we're going back to last Monday. That was today. So last Monday, released a session on making a GitHub action with Docker and .NET Core. So I've teased for a few times here on the show that I've been building my Hugo cross-poster, so I can cross-post my articles onto medium.com, onto dev2. Was building that on .NET Core so it can be cross-platform. I can run it on my Mac, on my Windows PC, wherever I want to go and run that. And one of the goals for me was making that a GitHub action so that I can integrate it into my CI/CD pipeline. So then I have the flexibility of either running it ahead of time as a one-off activity, if I like, on one or more articles, or actually doing it as a part of my release process, which is not quite integrated into the release process yet, but I'm nearly there. Again, just so many things I'm working on at the moment. So that's a blog post all about creating a GitHub action using a .NET Core console app, command line app, and containerizing that with Docker, and then using that in a GitHub action there. Then on Tuesday, which feels like an absolute lifetime ago, I presented to the excellent group in DevOps Nuts. So thank you for having me. A great bunch, some great questions, very friendly group. And you got a shout out, by the way, if you didn't hear that, in the Microsoft Build session that we did as well the day after. I called out that I had presented to you folks the night before. So again, great session, and great to talk about GitHub Actions with you all. So thanks again for having me and inviting me. Next up then was, of course, my build presentation day. So on Wednesday, we talked about creating friction-free code across all tools and frameworks. So had a lot of fun doing that. So again, thank you, Dean, thank you, Carol, thank you, Sarah, thank you, Adam, and everyone who was involved in the planning for that, and just for the invite to actually take part in that. I'm so pleased to have had the opportunity to do that, and want to go ahead and have some more of those kind of build ignite type sessions. So maybe that's something I can do a bit more of. I did say to my manager that one of the goals I have longer term as part of my development into development relations and doing this kind of thing and this evangelism is being able to keynote a conference, and all of this helps me go towards that goal. So big thank you to everyone for supporting me on my journey there, because I am still absolutely on a journey there. Friday then, of course, we released the build blog post there that we just walked through. And then also on Friday, released an episode with Matt Bradley on Tales from the Real World. So Matt works at UK Fast. He helped start the cloud division there. Whilst UK Fast works with AWS and Azure, he focuses primarily on the Azure side. So it was interesting to get his perspectives on setting up a practice for a cloud-based division inside of a company and serving customers, as well as his own journey of learning cloud as well. So very insightful session. If you're on your journey somewhere along the way, I'm sure there are things you'll be able to learn from Matt's journey in that video as well. So big thank you to Matt for coming along on that one. Then earlier today, I wrote I didn't write it, I published it. I didn't write this much this morning, I promise you. It was a blog post all about securing app service with easy auth behind a public application gateway. According to LinkedIn, this is a 17-minute read. It is a very long blog post. It was longer than I was anticipating it to be. But this is really based upon a scenario that I had encountered previously where I was discussing with some end users. They were looking to solve a challenge, so helping them go ahead and address that challenge here. So this one is particularly for accessing over a public application gateway, so public DNS. I potentially might look at doing one for a private scenario as well, because the measuring stick, the ballpark, whatever analogy you like or approach you like to take there, will be slightly different because of the way that custom domains, etc. work. But talk all about Azure, talk all about app service, application gateway, using app gateway for transparent architecture, so having the request pass through effectively. And there's no reason why the app gateway couldn't be WAF enabled. I didn't have it that way, but that might be a reason you want to go and have that in this kind of architecture here. So again, go ahead, check that one out if you are interested. Then finally, what's coming up this week? Well, let's take a look at what's upcoming. So, of course, we're recording the weekly vlog 22 today, a bit later than usual. But then on Wednesday, so that is a couple of days' time, we got another brilliant session with Lee Williams on cloud gaming notes. So building a game remotely. We recorded that one last week. It was a lot of fun catching up with Lee, talking about that one. Next up, we've got a session on Friday with Glenn, talking all about your career and your mental health. This one was actually really emotional for me to film. It might come across in the video, it might not. Being in the recording, watching the recording back was quite an emotional one, because Glenn is a really good friend of mine. Glenn is someone who was there for me when I really needed someone, when I had my challenges with mental health. It was a big support. And I explain a bit about some of the challenges I went through and some of the realization I went through and some of the discussions we had. And it made it feel like it was almost yesterday that we're having that discussion. It felt like we were just having that discussion again. And it hit home a few things and how far I've come back over the last year. And really, I just want it to be a session, as does Glenn, right? Because Glenn shares some of his own challenges he's had along the way, to help people. A lot of people are very career-driven, career-focused. I myself am that way and have been until a bit recently, I would say, where I've taken the foot off the pedal a little bit more. There's more to life than just your career. There's, of course, a lot more. There are other things you need to focus on, including your mental health. And that is a very special episode that will be coming out on Friday. So again, if you're interested in mental health, it's probably about 45, 50, 55 minutes long. It didn't feel like it when I watched it back. So again, I would encourage you to go and take a look at that one. And then finally, the other thing coming out this week is on Wednesday, I'm going to be doing a live stream with Sarah Lean, Techie Lass, talking all about live or recorded discussions, which will be a panel discussion on her YouTube channel. So we can either go to her YouTube channel directly, or you can go ahead, go to my talks page. You'll find it in the top section there. You can go ahead, click the link, and it will take you directly to the live stream. So that'll be at 6 p.m. UK time on Wednesday of this week, so June the 2nd. And of course, I am hoping to get this blog post series coming out later in the week as well. It's a 5 or 6-parter, as I mentioned earlier, all about Azure Arc for application services. The more I think about it, the less likely it's going to be coming out all 5 parts this week. But I will do my utmost to get there. I'm not going to bust a gut trying to get it. I will be reasonable. I've got lots of other things I need to work on in the time being. So, yes, we will do that at some point. They will be coming, I promise you. So with that, let's wrap up here. We've been going for about 35 minutes. It was supposed to be quite a quick one. We've been doing our usual thing of talking. So let's go ahead and wrap up. So there we go, folks. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for listening. As always, the support is hugely appreciated. As I mentioned at the beginning, 536 subscribers, hoping now to get to 1,000 by the end of the year. It might happen. It's a stretch goal. If I don't get it, that's absolutely fine. But the engagement I'm seeing across all the different social media channels and traffic coming onto the website with some of the recent content is really heartwarming, and it makes me want to keep doing more. So you know what to do. If you like the content, hit subscribe, hit the notification bell so you know as soon as there is brand new content. And of course, not just on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, and cloudwithchris.com, where, you know what, you can go ahead, you can read the transcript as well as listen to the recording as well. And of course, there are many blog posts on the website as well. Thank you so much for all of your support. It is greatly appreciated. For all of you in the UK or the US, wish you a great public holiday. Hope you take the downtime that you need and hopefully enjoy some great weather. And otherwise, have a great week ahead. Stay safe, stay healthy, and until the next one, folks, bye for now.